There comes a moment in all our lives when we choose ourselves. A moment when we step back from the chaos, the drama, the toxicity, and we decide enough is enough. That's what no contact is all about. It's not about revenge. It's not about punishment. It's about reclaiming your peace, your energy, your power. But here's the thing, when you choose to protect your spirit by cutting ties, they feel it. Oh, they feel it in ways they may not even understand at first. You see, when you were there, showing up, giving love, extending grace, whether they admitted it or not, you were the light in their life. The moment you step away, that light dims. They go through confusion. They start to wonder, how did we get here? And for some, it may be the first time they realize what they've lost. Because sometimes people don't value what's constant. They don't appreciate what they think will always be there until it isn't. They go through discomfort. Suddenly they're left with themselves. All the noise and distraction you once absorbed for them, it's gone. They're left to face the emptiness they tried to ignore. And let me tell you, facing yourself, that's hard work. And then they go through denial. They might try to act like they're unbothered, unfazed. But deep down, they know, they feel the absence of your presence, your kindness, your support. And it's not about ego. It's not about being self-important. It's about truth. The truth is, your energy was a gift. Now, some might go through growth. They might take this as a wake-up call. They might finally look in the mirror and start to do the work. And if they do, that's beautiful. But let's be honest, not everyone is ready for that. And here's where the important part comes in. What they go through is not your burden to carry. Let me say that again. What they go through is not your burden to carry. You don't need to feel guilty for choosing you. You don't need to explain, justify, or defend your decision. Because here's the truth, your healing journey is yours. It's sacred. And walking away from what no longer serves you is an act of love for yourself. It's a declaration that you deserve to live in peace, in joy, in alignment with who you are and what you stand for. So if you're in that season of no contact, don't second guess yourself. Trust that your absence will teach them more than your presence ever could. And trust that you are worthy of the boundaries you've set. Remember, you're not just walking away from something, you're walking toward something better, toward freedom, toward clarity, toward clarity. Thank you. When you remove yourself from someone's life, your absence creates a noticeable void. They realize the stability, love, and energy you brought into their world. Without your presence, they are forced to confront their own actions, behaviors, and patterns. The silence often mirrors truths they've avoided. Setting boundaries teaches others how to treat you. Your no-contact decision forces them to respect the line you've drawn, even if it's uncomfortable. Initially, they may deny their own role in the situation, trying to place blame elsewhere. But deep down, the realization begins to settle. They experience confusion, regret, or even anger, grappling with the fact that your absence is permanent unless meaningful change occurs. People often take kindness and consistency for granted until they are no longer there. No contact reminds them of what they've lost. By walking away, you reclaim your power. They no longer have access to your time, emotions, or energy, which creates a dynamic they weren't prepared for. What they go through after no contact is not your responsibility. Their journey toward understanding or healing is theirs to navigate, not yours to guide. When you make the decision to go no contact with someone, it is not a step taken lightly. It often follows a history of unresolved issues, toxic behavior, or emotional exhaustion. What many people fail to anticipate is the profound impact your absence has on the person from whom you've walked away. The shock of your absence hits them deeply, often in ways they are unprepared for and unable to fully articulate. This reaction, though invisible at times, is inevitable when someone who was once a constant presence in their life suddenly chooses to step away. In the beginning, they might not even register the gravity of your decision. It's common for them to dismiss the situation as temporary or a phase. They might think this won't last or assume you'll return once emotions cool down. This denial is a defense mechanism, a way to shield themselves from confronting the reality that your absence is deliberate and intentional. However, as days stretch into weeks and weeks into months, the truth begins to settle in. You're not coming back, at least not under the same conditions that existed before. What makes this absence so jarring is that people often underestimate the value of someone's presence until it's gone. They grow accustomed to having you there, whether it's through your support, your emotional availability, or even your mere willingness to listen. Perhaps you were the one they turned to in moments of crisis, the person who always gave them the benefit of the doubt, or the one who provided encouragement when they needed it most. Without you, there's a void. That void isn't just physical, it's emotional, mental, and sometimes even spiritual. It leaves them with a sense of imbalance, a gnawing realization that something essential is now missing. Your absence also disrupts their routine. If they were used to calling you to vent or relying on you to handle their emotional baggage, they suddenly have to figure out how to manage without you. This can be unsettling for them, as they've likely built a pattern of behavior that revolved around your availability and your willingness to accommodate their needs. When that pattern is broken, they are forced to adapt, which is neither easy nor comfortable. One of the most profound aspects of the shock of absence is its ability to make them confront their own behavior. When you're no longer there to absorb their negativity, tolerate their mistreatment, or serve as their emotional crutch, they are left to face themselves. For some, this can be a deeply unsettling experience. They may realize, perhaps for the first time, how much they relied on you to fill gaps in their own emotional or mental well-being. This realization can be humbling but also deeply uncomfortable, as it forces them to acknowledge the ways in which they may have contributed to the breakdown of the relationship. There's also a psychological component to your absence that plays a significant role in how they process the situation. Human beings tend to crave what they can no longer have. When you were present, they may have taken you for granted, assuming you would always be there regardless of how they treated you. But once you're gone, the scarcity of your presence makes them yearn for it in a way they never did before. This dynamic is a natural part of human psychology. We often fail to appreciate what we have until it's no longer within reach. However, the shock of your absence is not just about missing you as a person. It's about the loss of what you represented in their life. You may have been a source of stability, kindness, or even accountability. Without you, they are left to fill those gaps on their own, which can feel like an insurmountable challenge, especially if they lack the tools or self-awareness to do so. This is where the discomfort of growth or the resistance to it often comes into play. For some, the shock of your absence may serve as a catalyst for change. It might inspire them to reflect on their behavior, to seek help, or to make amends. For others, it might trigger defensiveness, denial, or even attempts to manipulate their way back into your life. Whatever their response, the one undeniable truth is this: your absence is felt. It reverberates through their thoughts, their emotions, and their daily lives. Though they may not admit it, they go through a period of adjustment, one that forces them to confront not only the loss of you, but also the parts of themselves they've neglected or ignored. This is the unspoken power of no contact. It's not just about creating distance, it's about creating space for both parties to understand the weight of what was and what can never be the same again. When you choose to go no contact with someone, the decision often forces them into a space they may have avoided for a long time: self-reflection. This process, though deeply necessary, can be incredibly challenging for the person on the receiving end. It strips away distractions, excuses, and the comforting noise of external validation, leaving them with their thoughts, feelings, and actions laid bare. For many, this period of self-reflection can be unsettling, even painful, as they begin to confront the ways in which their behavior, choices, and patterns contributed to the distance now separating them from you. One of the first things they experience is a sense of discomfort. This is not just the discomfort of missing your presence, it's the discomfort of being alone with themselves. Often people rely on relationships as mirrors, using others to affirm their worth or deflect from their own insecurities. When you remove yourself from that dynamic, they are left without the external validation they may have relied on, forcing them to confront their inner reality. For some, this is the first time they've had to sit with themselves in such a raw and honest way. Without your presence to shield them from their own shortcomings, they may begin to notice patterns they previously ignored. Perhaps they start to see how their words, actions, or attitudes created conflict, or how they failed to honor your boundaries or needs. This can be a deeply uncomfortable realization as it challenges the narrative they may have held about themselves that they were blameless, misunderstood, or always the victim. For others, self-reflection begins almost immediately. They might replay conversations, revisit past actions, or analyze their own behavior in an attempt to understand what went wrong. This can lead to moments of clarity where they recognize their mistakes and the impact of their choices on the relationship. However, these realizations are often accompanied by a wave of difficult emotions, guilt, regret, and even shame. These feelings can be overwhelming as they highlight not just the loss of the relationship, but also the loss of an opportunity to be better in the moment. The process of self-reflection also brings a sense of vulnerability. When someone is forced to confront their flaws, they are stripped of the defenses they've used to shield themselves from judgment, both their own and others. This vulnerability can feel destabilizing as it challenges their sense of self. They might begin to question who they are without the dynamic you once shared and whether they are capable of change or growth. For those who are willing to lean into the discomfort, self-reflection can serve as a powerful catalyst for personal transformation. It provides an opportunity to examine not only what went wrong in the relationship, but also what needs to change within themselves moving forward. This might involve recognizing toxic patterns, acknowledging unresolved pain, or identifying areas where they've fallen short in their ability to communicate, empathize, or connect. However, self-reflection is not always embraced. For some, the discomfort becomes too much to bear, leading them to seek distractions or external validation to avoid the hard truths they're being confronted with. They might jump into new relationships, overindulge in work or hobbies, or surround themselves with noise to drown out the voice of self-awareness. While this avoidance may provide temporary relief, it often leaves them stuck in the same patterns, unable to grow or heal from the experience. What makes self-reflection so impactful during a period of no contact is that it cannot be rushed or controlled by the person experiencing it. The process unfolds on its own timeline, guided by the silence and space your absence provides. For many, it's a deeply transformative journey, though not without its challenges. It forces them to take an honest inventory of their behavior, confront their insecurities, and reckon with the consequences of their actions. The initial effect is immediate. Boundaries disrupt patterns. When someone has grown used to accessing your time, energy, or emotions without limitations, the establishment of boundaries challenges their expectations. They may have relied on you to always be available to smooth over conflicts or to meet their needs without considering your own. By setting a firm boundary, such as no contact, you effectively disrupt their sense of entitlement or routine. This disruption often triggers confusion or frustration as they grapple with the fact that their access to you is no longer guaranteed. The ripple effect also reaches inward, transforming how you see yourself. Setting boundaries is an act of self-empowerment. It requires courage to recognize when a situation, relationship, or dynamic is no longer serving you and to take action to protect your peace. By asserting your needs, you send a powerful message to yourself that you are worthy of respect, that your well-being matters, and that you are not obligated to endure treatment that diminishes your sense of self. This internal shift can be transformative, fostering greater self-esteem, confidence, and clarity about your values and priorities. However, the ripple effect is not without challenges. Setting and maintaining boundaries can sometimes lead to feelings of guilt, especially if the person on the receiving end reacts negatively or expresses hurt. You might question whether your actions were too harsh or whether you should have given more chances. These moments of doubt are natural, but ultimately part of the growth process. Over time, you learn that prioritizing yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. As the ripple effect continues, the dynamic between you and the person you've distanced yourself from evolves. They may come to understand and respect your boundary, even if they initially resisted it. Alternatively, they may drift further away, unable or unwilling to adjust to the new limits you've established. Either outcome reinforces the purpose of the boundary to create a healthier, more balanced dynamic, whether within the relationship or through its absence. In some cases, the ripple effect leads to unexpected revelations. By setting boundaries, you may uncover truths about the other person or the relationship that were previously hidden. Perhaps their response to your boundary reveals a lack of respect, or conversely, it highlights their willingness to grow and change. Either way, your boundary brings clarity, shedding light on the true nature of the connection and allowing you to make decisions that align with your best interests. When you establish boundaries and choose to go no contact, the person affected may initially experience a phase that can be best described as denial. This period can be marked by a refusal to fully accept the reality of your decision, an attempt to minimize or ignore the reasons behind it, and a deep resistance to the emotional consequences of losing your presence in their life. The denial phase is a natural defense mechanism, one that allows individuals to protect their ego and avoid confronting painful truths. It serves as a temporary shield from the full weight of the situation, but it also complicates the process of emotional growth and resolution. But denial is not only about minimizing the situation, it is also about avoidance. When someone faces the reality that they have lost access to someone they care about, it forces them to reckon with their own role in the breakdown of the relationship. But this is often too painful to face immediately. In the denial phase, they might avoid reflecting on their actions or responsibility. Instead of taking the opportunity to examine their behavior or consider how they could change, they deflect, blame you, or dismiss the importance of your absence. This creates a barrier to any real personal growth, as the process of self-reflection is avoided in favor of self-protection. In some cases, denial can lead to attempts to reach out to you, despite your clear boundary. These attempts are often motivated by the desire to maintain control over the situation, to prove that the relationship is not really over, or to avoid the discomfort of facing their emotions. They might send messages, make calls, or even show up at your door, all in an effort to break through the silence and reconnect with you. These actions are not always out of malice, but rather out of a deep need to avoid the discomfort of accepting that the relationship has truly ended. In this phase, the person is clinging to the hope that the boundaries you've set are temporary, just as their denial is. However, as time progresses, the denial phase typically gives way to other emotions, regret, sadness, guilt, or eventually self-reflection. While the journey out of denial is not always easy or smooth, it is a necessary part of the emotional process. In the long run, facing the reality of the situation opens the door to healing, growth, and possibly reconciliation, though reconciliation will only occur if both parties are willing to do the necessary work. When you go no contact with someone, the emotional toll it takes on the person from whom you've distanced yourself is profound, and it often leads them on a turbulent emotional journey, a roller coaster of highs, lows, and sharp turns that they didn't expect. This emotional turmoil is a natural response to the loss of a connection that once had significance in their life. The sudden absence of someone they were used to being close to creates a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, forcing them to navigate through feelings of confusion, sadness, anger, guilt, and even self-doubt. Each of these emotions builds on the other, creating an unpredictable cycle of emotional highs and lows that can feel overwhelming. However, as the emotional roller coaster continues, there are often moments of clarity. Through the pain, the anger, the guilt, and the self-doubt, there may come a realization, sometimes subtle, sometimes profound, that the decision to go no contact was not about them as an individual, but about a need to protect oneself. At some point, they may understand that the dynamic they had with you was unhealthy or unsustainable, and that your decision was an act of self-preservation. This understanding doesn't immediately ease the pain, but it does shift the perspective. It becomes a reminder that relationships should be built on mutual respect, care, and boundaries, and that your choice to distance yourself may have been the healthiest one for both parties. When you decide to go no contact with someone, their world changes in subtle and profound ways. Often it is not until you are no longer present that they come to fully understand the value of your presence. The absence of someone who once played a significant role in their life can be a revelation, a powerful reminder of how deeply your existence impacted their emotional landscape. It is in this silence, in the space where you used to be, that the weight of your presence is truly felt. The first realization often comes in the form of loss. When you're no longer around, there is a void that they can't ignore. It's not just the physical absence, but the emotional and mental space you occupied. If you were someone who offered emotional support, they will quickly recognize the absence of your listening ear, your empathy, and your advice. If you were a source of comfort during tough times, they may feel the sting of loneliness when life becomes challenging again, without you to lean on. The recognition that you were their emotional anchor, someone they could count on, becomes all the more evident when that anchor is no longer there. Beyond emotional support, your presence may have offered a sense of stability and safety that they took for granted. In relationships, particularly those that are long-term, people often develop a certain rhythm or dynamic. The presence of another person can provide a sense of order, a feeling that there is someone who understands the unspoken rules of the relationship, who knows the right time to speak and the right time to listen. When you are no longer a part of their daily life, they may feel as though something foundational is missing. The comfort that comes from familiarity and routine can be disrupted, leaving them to navigate the world in a way they weren't prepared for. When you decide to go no contact with someone, you are not simply stepping away from the relationship, you are also initiating a powerful shift in the dynamics of that connection. The power balance that once existed between both of you is suddenly altered, and this change can have a profound impact on the person who remains behind. The absence of your presence creates a void that shifts the flow of energy, control, and emotional influence. What was once a shared dynamic is now redefined, and this shift can create a ripple effect that is felt deeply on both sides. This shift in power can also bring clarity. When you remove yourself from the constant engagement or emotional labor of the relationship, you may begin to see things more clearly. The noise, the emotional ups and downs, and the back and forth communication cease. This absence can bring a new perspective, where you start to recognize your own value and the ways in which the relationship may have undermined your sense of self. You begin to see how the power dynamics played out before and how the relationship may have been draining or unbalanced. This shift is a form of empowerment as you reclaim your autonomy and realize you can live without being tethered to the other person. This power shift can lead to growth on both sides. On one hand, it forces the person left behind to confront the fact that relationships are not about control or dependency, but about mutual respect, understanding, and emotional investment. They may have to examine their own attachment patterns or the ways in which they relate to others. On the other hand, it pushes the person who initiated the no contact to confront the realities of their own emotional boundaries. They may gain a deeper understanding of their own needs and how they can assert those needs without feeling guilty or compromising their well-being. Over time, this power shift can lead to a reconfiguration of both parties' emotional lives. The person who initiated the no contact may begin to set clearer boundaries in other areas of their life, recognizing that they have the right to protect themselves from unhealthy dynamics. For the other person, this shift might prompt them to reflect on how they can change their approach to relationships, learning the importance of balance, respect, and self-awareness. The power dynamic may never return to what it was, but the lesson learned from the shift is often lasting and transformative. When someone decides to go no contact, it sets in motion a period of emotional reckoning that can lead to two distinct paths for the person left behind: growth or resistance. The decision to cut ties and withdraw from the relationship creates a significant shift in their life, and how they respond to that shift can have a profound impact on their emotional journey moving forward. The absence of communication, the space between both people, becomes a mirror that reflects deep truths about who they are, how they view relationships, and whether they are willing to evolve or remain stuck in their patterns. The challenge, therefore, is not only in the initial shock of losing the connection, but in how they choose to navigate the emotional fallout that follows. For many, the process of growth involves confronting their emotional triggers. The no contact situation forces them to face the discomfort of their own emotional dependency or attachment patterns. They may find that they relied too heavily on the relationship for their sense of worth, and without it they feel empty or lost. This realization, while painful, is necessary for growth. It is only by identifying and confronting their vulnerabilities that they can begin to heal and build a more secure, independent sense of self. They may start to focus on self-care, learn to cultivate inner peace, and take responsibility for their emotional well-being. In essence, the absence of the other person becomes a powerful reminder that growth comes from within, not from external validation or dependency. The choice to go no contact, then, is an acknowledgement that this emotional burden is no longer theirs to carry. It is an act of self-preservation, a refusal to continue shouldering the weight of someone else's emotions, mistakes, or unresolved issues. The decision to set this boundary is not about abandoning the other person, but about recognizing that they must take responsibility for their own growth and healing. It is a difficult but necessary acknowledgement that, while empathy and support are essential in healthy relationships, there comes a point where enabling dysfunctional patterns or taking on excessive emotional labor is unhealthy and unsustainable. When someone else is not taking responsibility for their emotional state, the burden inevitably falls on the person who is more willing to step in. This dynamic can be particularly toxic in relationships where one person continually expects the other to manage their emotions or fix their problems. The emotional burden becomes an unspoken expectation, the idea that the other person will always be there to listen, to comfort, or to manage the fallout of poor decisions. This can lead to an imbalance where one person is constantly drained, trying to be the solution to another person's emotional chaos, while the other continues to avoid taking responsibility for their own life and feelings. Going no contact can feel like an act of emotional reclamation. It is an acknowledgement that your own feelings, boundaries, and needs are just as important as those of the other person. For those who are used to putting others first, this can be a difficult realization to come to. But it is also an incredibly empowering one. The act of walking away from a relationship that is no longer healthy or balanced allows for the creation of emotional space, a space in which healing, growth, and self-reflection can take place. It gives the individual an opportunity to reconnect with themselves, to rediscover their own needs, desires, and passions without being overshadowed by the emotional demands of someone else. The victory of self-love also lies in the realization that relationships cannot be the source of your happiness or emotional stability. Many people enter relationships with the hope that the other person will provide them with a sense of completeness, happiness, or validation. However, this external reliance on another person for fulfillment often leads to disappointment and emotional dependency. By choosing no contact, you are breaking free from the illusion that your happiness is tied to someone else's presence or approval. Instead, you are acknowledging that true fulfillment comes from within, from knowing who you are, what you need, and what you will no longer tolerate. One of the most profound victories of self-love after going no contact is the emotional freedom that it brings. When you break free from a relationship that has held you emotionally hostage, you give yourself permission to experience life on your own terms. The emotional attachment that once clouded your judgment begins to fade, and with it, the emotional weight that you have been carrying. This freedom allows for clarity about what you need in future relationships, what boundaries you are willing to set, and what you are no longer willing to tolerate. The liberation that comes from letting go of a toxic or unbalanced connection gives you the power to move forward with a greater sense of confidence, emotional resilience, and self-assurance. The victory of self-love is not just a momentary triumph, it is an ongoing practice. It is the commitment to continuously choose yourself, to prioritize your happiness, and to set boundaries that protect your emotional well-being. It is an act of honoring your worth, both in how you treat yourself and how you allow others to treat you. Through no contact, individuals who embrace self-love are making a declaration they are worthy of love, respect, and happiness, and they will not settle for anything less. This victory is not just about letting go of a person, but about embracing the power of self-empowerment, self-respect, and the deep belief that you are enough, just as you are.